The night was cold and silent. The lights of the human colony flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the narrow back alleys. Most people were asleep or inside their warm homes. But one man, a maintenance worker named Leon, walked alone with his toolbox. He had just finished a late repair shift and was heading home. He didn't expect anything unusual, just another night. Just another walk. But then he heard it. A sound, a small sound. A whimper came from the shadows between two trash bins. He stopped and listened. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't an animal. It sounded scared. Cautiously, Leon stepped closer. He turned on the flashlight attached to his wristband. The beam cut through the darkness, and there she was. Curled up behind the bins was a small figure, thin, shivering. Her skin was a pale bluish gray. Her hair was tangled and dirty, but glowed faintly in the light, and from her back a tail lay. Stretched across the ground, injured and bleeding. Leon blinked in shock. An alien girl. She looked no older than 10, at least in size, but her wide golden eyes held deep pain. Her body was thin, covered in rags, and her tail. It was wrapped with something that looked like broken metal wires, digging into the skin. Blood had soaked the area. She looked up at Leon, terrified. "It's okay," he whispered gently, kneeling down. "I won't hurt you." She didn't move. She just stared. Her breathing was quick, like she was ready to run, but she couldn't. Her tail was badly hurt. Maybe she couldn't even stand. Leon looked around. The alley was empty. The colony guards didn't patrol here often. This part of the colony was poor, forgotten. He knew if someone else found her, they might report her. Or worse, he removed his jacket and slowly reached toward her. She flinched and let out a soft hiss. "I'm just helping," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Look, you're bleeding. Let me wrap it." She didn't answer. But she didn't run either. He gently wrapped the jacket around her tail, trying not to touch the wounds. She tensed at first, then slowly relaxed. Her breathing slowed. Her shoulders dropped. She was exhausted. Leon pulled a thermal patch from his belt and pressed it onto the bleeding part. It hissed softly as it activated. The girl gave a quiet, broken cry but didn't pull away. He sat beside her, unsure what to do next. "What happened to you?" he asked softly. No answer. The girl blinked slowly. Then her head leaned forward. Before he could move, she collapsed. Against his chest, light as a feather. Cold as ice, Leon froze. She was trusting him. A stranger, a human. He looked down at her thin arms, her curled tail wrapped in his jacket. She was breathing, just barely. Her hands were rough, like someone had made her work hard. He couldn't leave her here. He stood up carefully, carrying her in his arms. She didn't resist. Her head rested on his shoulder, her tail limp behind them. As he walked back through the dark streets, he passed a few other workers. Some gave him strange looks. One man laughed. "Where'd you pick up that trash, Leon?" Didn't answer. He walked faster, back at his small apartment. He laid her down on the couch. It was old, worn, but soft. He found a blanket and covered her gently. She didn't wake up. She just curled up tighter, like a cat, her tail trying to wrap around her leg. The thermal patch was still working. The bleeding had slowed. Leon sat on the floor beside her, thinking, she wasn't a pet. She wasn't a worker. She wasn't trash. She was a girl. An alien girl, hurt, alone, and she had trusted him. He didn't know what she had gone through, but he could see the signs: hunger, fear, injuries, chains. Someone had hurt her. That night, Leon didn't sleep much. He sat beside the couch, making sure she was breathing. He added another patch to her tail. He checked her temperature. He turned up the heat. At one point, her hand reached out in her sleep. It touched his arm. She didn't open her eyes, but her lips moved. Safe. Leon froze. She had spoken. Just one word, safe. It hit him like a punch to the chest, he promised himself. Something right then. He would keep her safe no matter what. That tail, that injured, bloody tail, was now wrapped with care, and the small alien girl, unwanted by the world, now slept curled up on his lap. Morning light crept slowly into Leon's tiny apartment, painting the floor in soft gold. He hadn't slept all night. He sat still on the floor, his back against the couch, careful not to move. The alien girl was curled tightly in a ball beside him, her tail wrapped awkwardly in his jacket, her small chest rising and falling softly. Leon looked at her again. Even in sleep, her face wasn't peaceful. Her brows were tense, like she was ready to flinch at any moment. She whimpered sometimes, barely audible. She was still afraid. Leon gently stood up, stretching his stiff legs. He needed to get supplies, more bandages, food, and clean clothes. The thermal patch on her tail had slowed the bleeding, but it wasn't enough. He carefully tried to lift her and place her on a pillow so he could leave quietly. But the moment he touched her, her eyes snapped open. She gasped and gripped his arm like iron. Hey, it's okay. Leon whispered quickly, trying not to scare her more. But she wouldn't let go. Her fingers clutched his sleeve tightly. Her glowing golden eyes were wide, full of panic. I'm not leaving you, he said softly. I just need to go get medicine. You're hurt. I want to help. The girl didn't understand all the words, but she understood the fear of being left alone. Her body trembled. Her tail curled tightly around her own leg. Her eyes darted to the door and back to Leon. Look, Leon said gently, kneeling down. Come with me. I'll carry you. But we need to get help, okay? Still no answer, but she slowly, very slowly, loosened her grip. She looked away a bit. Didn't resist when he lifted her into his arms. Her tail brushed against his side, and though it was injured, she tried to wrap it weakly around his waist. Not to defend, not to fight, just to hold on like a child afraid of falling. Leon pulled the hood of his old coat over her head, stepped outside. The morning streets were quiet. A few early workers passed by, but no one looked too closely. The colony's outer ring wasn't tightly monitored. It was poor, dirty, and ignored. That's why Leon lived here. He carried the girl down the street to a back alley. Medic he knew, a retired nurse who still treated illegal cases. When he knocked on the hidden door, a gruff voice answered. Leon, you're bringing me another broken pipe or a broken promise? It's a broken tail this time, Leon said softly. The door opened. The nurse, tired-looking woman with short gray hair, raised an eyebrow. Leon moved aside his coat, revealing the girl in his arms. The nurse's face changed. Get inside. Now, inside, the place smelled of medicine and oil. The nurse cleared a table and nodded at Leon to lay the girl down. The girl didn't want to let go. Her tail twitched and tried to stay wrapped around him. She doesn't trust anyone, Leon explained, sitting beside her. I don't blame her, the nurse replied as she carefully removed the makeshift bandage. Her eyes narrowed at the wounds. These aren't from an accident, she muttered. She was chained. Barbed cuffs, sharp clamps, and these bruises. Someone beat her. Leon clenched his fists. The girl whimpered as the nurse applied healing foam to her tail, but she didn't cry out. She bit her lip and looked at Leon with tear-filled eyes. Almost done, Leon whispered, gently holding her hand. You're doing great. The nurse worked quickly. I can stop the bleeding and close the wounds, she said. But she needs rest, food, and time. She's half-starved and scared out of her mind. Leon nodded. She'll stay with me. You're not scared? The nurse asked. Leon looked at the girl again. She had stopped shaking. Her breathing was softer. Her eyes were closing again. "No," he said quietly. "She's not dangerous. She's just a girl." The nurse handed him a bag of supplies, clean wraps, nutrient packs, soft clothes. "No charge," she said, "but be careful. Whoever hurt her might come looking." Leon carried the girl home again. This time, she didn't tremble when he laid her down on his bed. She reached for him again. Not with her hands, but with her tail. It curled around his arms softly, like a ribbon of trust. He smiled. "You're safe now," he whispered. She blinked slowly, then closed. Her eyes, her tail still wrapped around him. And so, once again, she fell asleep, curled up against him. But this time, it wasn't fear that held her there. It was comfort. The girl didn't speak much, not in any full sentences. But her eyes said everything. Sadness, fear, pain, and something else, too, something that confused Leon. Silence. Even when she was awake, she made almost no sound. She didn't cry. She didn't call out. Not even when the medicine stung her tail. It was like she had learned not to. Leon noticed it more with every hour she spent in his home. She walked softly, barely breathing. Loud. If something fell or made noise, she flinched like she expected punishment. Something bad had trained her to live like that. Leon couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, while she rested on his bed, wrapped in his blanket, he decided to search the alley where he'd first found her. Maybe there were answers there. Maybe there were signs of what had happened, or who had done it. He left quietly, telling her softly, "I'll be back soon." But she still followed him to the door and sat down, waiting there, tail gently swaying. It made him hesitate. But he had to know. The alley looked just like it did that night, dark, quiet, and empty. But now, in daylight, he could see more. And what he saw made his blood run cold. Near the wall, behind the trash bins, something metallic glinted. He moved closer and crouched down. It was a collar, a thick, broken collar with strange alien symbols carved into the metal. He picked it up carefully. It was heavy, sharp on the inside. There were dried traces of blood where it had dug into soft skin. He looked around more and found chains. Long ones, broken, yes, but scorched at the ends, like they'd been burned off. There were claw marks on the wall, too, deep and desperate, as if someone had tried to climb away. Black smudges of dried blood and soot covered part of the ground. Leon's heart thud dead. She had escaped. Someone had chained her, up right here. Like a prisoner, maybe even a slave. And she had broken free. Or someone helped her break free. He turned the collar in his hand again, and noticed something strange. Wasn't just a collar. There was a number on it, a serial tag, a living being, marked like property. Leon felt sick. He returned home quickly, hiding the collar in his coat. The girl was still waiting by the door. When she saw him, her face lit up, not with a smile, but with clear relief. She rushed forward and hugged him tightly. She thought he wouldn't come back. Leon knelt and hugged her back. "I'm here," he whispered. Later that evening, he sat at the table and placed the collar in front of her. He watched her carefully, trying to see her reaction. The moment her eyes landed on it, she froze. Her tail stiffened. Her whole body went rigid. She backed away slowly, shaking her head. "I'm sorry," Leon said quickly. "I just found it in the alley. I didn't mean to scare you." She didn't speak. Her hands trembled. Then, after a long pause, she walked over to the table, picked up a pencil, and began to draw on a piece of paper. Slow, careful lines. She wasn't drawing a picture. She was writing not in human words, but in her own alien symbols. Then she looked at Leon and tapped the page. Her eyes were serious. Leon didn't understand the writing, But she pointed to the collar, then pointed to her drawing, then to herself. This was you. He asked, gently. She nodded. Leon looked at the strange letters again. They were beautiful, curved symbols like flowing vines. He had never seen writing like it. You can write, he whispered, your language. She nodded again, more slowly. This time, then she wrote one more symbol. A circle with a line through it. When she pointed to that one, her fingers shook. Leon realized it wasn't just writing. It was a name. Her name. She had been treated like property, chained, hurt, marked with numbers. But now, with a pencil and shaky hands, she was reclaiming her name. Leon gently tapped the page. What's your name? Can I say it? She hesitated, then whispered something soft. Kaylee, she said. It was the first time she had spoken her name out loud. Leon smiled. Kaylee, that's beautiful. Her golden eyes shimmered. She looked down shyly, her tail curling around her leg. That night, Leon burned the collar. He stood outside under the stars, lit a small fire, and dropped the metal ring into the flames. Kit sparked and finally cracked. Kaylee stood beside him, watching. She didn't say a word. But as the collar turned to ash, her tail slowly wrapped around his arm. Not in fear, not in pain, but in trust. Leon noticed something different about Kaylee's tail. It wasn't just a limb. It moved with purpose. It reacted to emotions. When she was scared, it wrapped tightly around her leg. When she was shy, it flicked slowly behind her. And when she felt safe, like when she sat beside him, drinking warm broth, it gently curled around his wrist or waist, soft and careful. Her tail told stories she couldn't speak. One morning, after giving her a warm meal, Leon sat on the floor while Kaylee curled up beside him. Her tail moved gently across the floor, almost playfully. Then, without warning, it reached up and touched his face. Leon blinked. Hey, what's that mean? He asked with a smile. Kaylee didn't answer right away, but her eyes met his, and she gave a small nod, a thank you. A blessing? He didn't know. But it felt gentle, kind, personal. She pointed at his hand, then at her tail. She began drawing in the air, using her tail like a pen, making graceful loops and swirls. He watched closely. Then she took his hand and guided his finger to do the same shapes on the floor. They were symbols. Her language. But also something more. Leon realized her people must have used their tails for writing, for expression, for connection. The tail wasn't just for balance. It was part of how they communicated. He was learning a whole new way to listen. Later that day, he asked, "Can you show me your words again? Teach me something." Kaylee lit up just a little. She grabbed a stick of charcoal and gently tugged Leon's sleeve toward the wall. He laughed. Okay, just don't draw over my calendar." She giggled softly, one of the first times he heard her laugh, even if it was quiet. Then, with smooth movements, she began drawing symbols on the empty wall. Her tail guided her hand, moving in perfect rhythm. Each swirl, dot, and line was full of meaning. As she wrote, her tail curled behind her like a ribbon, dancing in the air. Leon copied the first symbol. It looked like a spiral within a circle. "What's this mean?" he asked. Kai lifted her hand over her heart. "Safe," she said softly. Leon smiled. "Safe. That's the first word I'll learn." Then she smiled back, but the lesson didn't last long, because when Kaylee reached to draw the next symbol, her movement stopped halfway. Her tail froze. Leon turned. She was staring at the scar near the base of her tail. He had seen it before, but never asked. A deep, jagged wound, duller than the others. The fur and skin around it didn't grow back right. She touched it gently, then looked away. Leon understood. That one? They gave it to you, didn't they? Kaylee didn't reply, but she sat down beside him, pulled her tail close, and rested her chin on it. Then she began to hum. A soft tune, gentle, sad. It wasn't a human song. It was alien, strange and beautiful. And with her tail, she began to move, like drawing music in the air. Leon realized she was remembering something. A memory, maybe of home, maybe of family, maybe of a time before pain. He didn't speak. He just sat there with her, listening, watching her tail draw invisible lines of emotion in the room. After a while, she stopped humming. She looked at Leon as if asking, "Did you understand?" "I think so," he said gently. "That was someone you lost, wasn't it?" Kaylee nodded. Then she did something unexpected. She took the tip of her tail and touched it to his chest, just above his heart. A single light tap. Then she looked down. Leon placed his hand over that spot. "You can trust me," he whispered. "You're not alone anymore." That night, she didn't sleep on the couch or on the bed. She chose to curl up beside him on the floor. Near the small heater, her tail wrapped lightly around his leg. Not clinging, just holding. A soft touch. A quiet message. She was still healing. Her wounds still hurt. But her tail, once used for chains, once marked with pain, was now writing new stories. Stories of safety, stories of trust, stories of a bond forming. One quiet night at a time. The days passed quietly. Kaylee's wounds began to heal. Her tail, though still wrapped in bandages, moved more freely now. She no longer flinched when Leon entered the room. Sometimes she even greeted him with a soft hum and a shy look. But the peace didn't last long. One morning, just before sunrise, a loud knock echoed through the metal walls of Leon's apartment. Bang, bang, bang. Kaylee jumped from her spot on the couch, eyes wide with panic. Her tail stiffened like a rod, wrapping tightly around her leg. Leon stood still, staring at the door. The knocks came again, sharp, heavy, like they weren't made by human hands. He walked to the door and peeked through the small wall cam. 3 figures stood outside. Not colony officers, not neighbors. They wore thick black coats with strange symbols. Their boots were heavy. One of them had glowing red eyes under a dark helmet. Another sniffed the air slowly, like an animal tracking a scent. Leon's stomach dropped. They weren't human, and they were looking for someone. He turned quickly to Kaylee, who was already backing into the corner, eyes shaking. "They found you, didn't they?" he whispered. She nodded slowly, tears rising in her golden eyes. Leon made a fast decision. "Come on," he said, grabbing her hand. "We hide." He pulled her to the back of the apartment. There was a loose panel in the floor. He'd never fixed properly. Under it, small maintenance crawl space. Tight, dusty. But hidden, he lifted the panel and motioned for her to go inside. Her eyes were filled with fear, but she obeyed. Her tail slid in after her, still trembling. He gave her a blanket, a flashlight, and whispered, "Don't make a sound, no matter what happens. I'll come get you." She reached out, her tail curled briefly around its wrist before vanishing into the dark. He replaced the panel and stood up just as the third knock came, harder than before. Bang! He walked to the door and opened it halfway. "Can I help you?" he asked calmly. The tall figure in the front stepped forward. His voice was robotic and cold. "We're looking for a creature. Small, female. Escaped from off-world transport." Leon raised an eyebrow. "Don't know what you're talking about." The second figure, the one with the helmet, stepped closer. "We traced her signal to this block. She was tagged with a tracking implant." Leon felt sweat on his back, kept his face neutral. Lots of people in this block, he said. Try the junkyard. The third one sniffed the air again and pointed toward the back wall. She was here, it growled. I smell her. Leon narrowed his eyes. You gonna break in and sniff everyone's floor? She's not here now. The leader stared at him. For a long moment, then he stepped back. If you see her, he said, you report. There's a reward, or a punishment. Leon stayed quiet. They turned and walked away slowly, vanishing into the morning fog. Leon waited until the footsteps faded. Then he bolted to the back and opened the panel. Kaylee was curled up tightly, eyes closed. Hands over her mouth. You're okay, he whispered, lifting her out. They're gone. She shook all over, clinging to him with her arms and tail. She made no sound, just trembled. He held her close. They're not taking you, he said, voice hard. I won't let them. That night, they didn't sleep. Leon started packing. He gathered supplies, food, medicine, clothes. He uploaded maps onto his wristband. The outer colony had forests, rivers, and mountains beyond the walls. Places where cameras didn't work. Places where they could disappear. Kaylee watched quietly. Then, without a word, she walked to the wall. Where she had once drawn her symbols, she wiped part of it clean and began to write. Again, Leon watched as she drew a curved mountain, a tree, and a pair of stars. Then, under it, spiral. The same spiral she had once told him meant safe. She was ready to run, but she wanted to go together. Leon nodded. The next morning, before the sun rose, they slipped out through the old sewage tunnel behind the colony. It smelled terrible, but no one patrolled there. Kaylee held onto his back, her arms tight around his shoulders, her tail carefully wrapped around his chest so she wouldn't fall. They left behind the buildings, the lights, and the danger. Into the forest, into the unknown. But for the first time, Kaylee wasn't running alone. The forest was wide and quiet. Tall trees rose like towers, their leaves glowing faintly in the early dawn light. Strange flowers opened slowly with the wind. Alien birds chirped high above, and soft fog rolled across the forest floor. It was peaceful. But neither of them felt peace. Not yet. Leon had built a simple shelter out of survival tarps and branches near a slow-moving stream. It wasn't much, but it kept out the cold. He had made 2 bedrolls, one for her, one for himself. But Kaylee refused to sleep alone every night when he lay down. She quietly curled up beside him, her tail gently wrapping around his leg, her head resting near his shoulder. She never spoke during the nights, but Leon could tell she wasn't sleeping. Deeply, her body twitched. Her breathing would speed up suddenly. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she would wake up in a cold sweat, her eyes wide and glowing with panic. It had happened again last night. Leon sat up and pulled the blanket over her small frame. You're safe, he whispered, rubbing her back slowly. No one's coming. She didn't speak. She just clung to him like a child scared of the dark. In the morning, as the sun pierced through the trees, Kaylee finally spoke. My kind never slept. In peace, she said, voice soft and broken. Leon looked at her. It was the longest sentence she had spoken yet. What do you mean? He asked gently. She pointed to her head. Dreams, she said. Bad. Always bad. Leon nodded slowly. Nightmares. She nodded too, then drew something in the dirt. It was a figure tall and sharp, with long arms and glowing red eyes. They came? Leon asked. She drew smaller figures behind. The tall one, chained, hurt, caged, Kaylee, pointed to herself. Leon's heart sank. She wasn't the only one. Others had been taken, her people. How many of you were there? He asked. She thought. For a long time, then held up 4 fingers. Then 2 more 6 double quotes, "Where are the others?" he asked. She shook her head, eyes dark. "Gone." Leon reached out and gently touched her hand. "You're not gone," he said. "You're here. You're alive." Tears slipped down her cheeks. But she didn't look away. Instead, she picked up a stick and began to draw again. This time, it was different. She drew an egg, then a nest, then a symbol he had seen before, the spiral. "Home." Leon asked. Kaylee nodded. Then she drew a flame. It swallowed the nest, and next to it, she drew herself. Alone, Leon didn't speak. His hands curled into fists. So much pain, so much loss. For someone so small. But then, she drew again. A stick figure. A human. She drew his tool belt. His beard. His awkward smile. Leon laughed softly. "That's me." She nodded and gave a shy little grin. Then she drew a blanket. 2 figures under it. A swirl between them. Safe, her way of saying, "This is my home now." Leon leaned back, heart heavy and warm at the same time. But something still bothered him. "How did you escape?" he asked. "Those men, those hunters." "You were chained. How did you get away?" Kaylee didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, she turned her back to him and lifted her hair. There, on her neck, hidden under her hairline, was a burn mark. Fresh, but not from fire, from a broken implant. "They tracked you," Leon whispered. She nodded. Did you break it yourself?" She reached for her tail and unwrapped the last bandage. Under it was not just a wound, it was a scar. Melted, burned around something once implanted. She had destroyed her own tracker. With pain. With risk. With everything she had. Leon stared in silence. "You're brave," he said. She shook her head. "No. Just wanted to live." He looked at her for a long time, then whispered, "You deserve more than just life, Kaylee. You deserve peace." She blinked, not understanding. He pointed to her drawings, the spiral. "The nest, the safe place. I'll help you build a real home again. Somewhere they'll never find you." Kaylee tilted her head. "Home." Leon smiled. Home. That night, as the fire crackled outside the shelter, Kaylee lay beside him, tail gently wrapped around his arm, and, for the first time, she slept without waking up crying. The sky was full of stars, bright, endless. And silent Leon sat outside their small forest shelter, staring at the stars while the fire crackled beside him. Kaylee was inside, curled up in her new blanket, her tail wrapped gently around her own waist, like a ribbon of calm. She had been sleeping peacefully for days. Now, no screams, no shaking, just soft, quiet breathing. Leon smiled to himself. It hadn't been easy, but things had changed. He had built more than just a shelter now. Using wood, stone, and old metal scraps he carried from the colony's edge, he had made a small cabin, basic, but strong. He carved a proper bed frame. He fixed a little window. He even found wild fruits and seeds to plant nearby every day. Kaylee helped. Her tail, once injured and bandaged, now moved with grace again. She used it to carry small tools, balance while climbing trees, even playfully nudge Leon's arm when he wasn't paying attention. One day, she brought him something special, a crystal leaf she had found near the river. She handed it to him, her face proud. Then she drew the spiral symbol on the ground. Safe. Leon placed the leaf on the cabin's wall above the doorway. Their sign, their symbol. Home. That evening, Kaylee surprised him again. She brought out the charcoal stick and began to draw in the dirt. This time, the drawing was longer, more detailed. It showed a girl in chains, then the girl escaping, then a man kneeling to help her, then a fire, then a small house, then a spiral between them. Leon watched in silence. "It's our story," he said quietly. Kaylee nodded. Then she added one more drawing. A child with a tail. Leon raised his eyebrows. "Is that you?" She shook her head, then pointed to her drawing and placed her hand over her chest. Then to the child, and pointed to the sky. Leon's breath caught. "Your future." "Ah," he asked softly. She nodded again. He looked at her for a long time. "You believe there's hope." Her golden eyes shimmered. She stepped closer, took his hand, and pressed it against her cheek. Then, gently, hush, she wrapped her tail around his waist. "I have hope now," she whispered. It was the clearest she had ever spoken. Leon couldn't say anything back for a moment. He just held her close, listening to the sounds of the forest. Feeling her heartbeat slow, he remembered the night he first found her in that cold, dark alley, bleeding and afraid. Now she stood in the moonlight, stronger, braver, free, and still. Every night, she chose to curl up beside him, not because she was scared anymore, but because she wanted to. The next day, something changed as they were gathering berries near the stream. A strange sound echoed through the trees, a soft hum, deep. And far away, Kaylee froze. Leon turned toward the sky. A ship, it was far, high above the clouds. Not heading toward them. Just passing. But the sound brought back fear in Kaylee's eyes. Leon knelt and held her hand. "They're not looking for you anymore," he said. "We're safe here." She didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her pouch and pulled out a small object. It was broken, metal, and old, the implant core from her tracker. She had kept it all this time without a word. She handed it to him. Leon understood. They would bury it together. He dug a small hole near the cabin and placed the core inside. Kaylee dropped in a wildflower on top. A grave for her past. Seed for her future. They covered it with earth and stepped back. That night, by the fire, Kaylee sat beside him again. But this time, her tail did something new. It gently lifted the edge of his shirt and wrapped around his waist, tightly like a belt. Like a hug? She looked up at him, blushing slightly. He smiled. "What does that mean?" She looked down shyly, then whispered, "Bond." Leon's heart skipped a beat. "Like family?" he asked. She nodded slowly, then added softly, "Chosen." He wrapped his arm around her and held her close. "You chose me?" he asked. She nodded once more, burying her face into his chest. "I chose you too," he whispered. From that night on, they weren't just a runaway and her rescuer. They were something more, something unspoken, but deeply felt. And as the fire warmed the cabin, and the stars watched silently from above, Kaylee curled up beside him once again, her tail, once torn and bleeding, now full of life, wrapped softly around the man who had changed her world, and helped her believe in something she never thought possible again. Hope